In the original story of Bardock's life, Frieza destroyed planet Vegeta and took Bardock with him. But in 2011's episode of Bardock, Nahoishi wrote a what-if scenario of Bardock going back in time and facing off against Frieza's ancestor, Chilled, becoming a Super Saiyan. But I've often wondered what would have happened if Bardock, with the knowledge that Frieza was going to genocide the entire race, would have chosen not to have gone on that suicide mission and assault Frieza, and instead would have escaped the planet. What if Bardock survived? What would he do? Welcome to a brand new series here on Geekdom 101 entitled What If Discussions, where myself and the legendary Qaaman discuss possible what if scenarios and theories, and on this edition we're talking about what if Bardock survived. Let's get to it next. Hey guys, if you're enjoying the content I provide here on Geekdom 101, don't forget to hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications so that you get every video right to your device, and thank you so much. So Bardock is one of the most popular characters in all of Dragon Ball, and what would have happened if he would have survived? And again, we're not going to address episode of Bardock because that's Nahoishi's what if scenario, but we are going to address what would have happened if Bardock got the visions he did in the Bardock special, knew what Frieza was going to do, tried to ask the other Saiyans for help, they refused, all of this was in the special, and then he said, you know what, rather than attack Frieza, let me escape, lick my wounds, and think about what's going to happen. Because remember, Bardock was very injured from his battle with Dodoria. So, joining me on this discussion, I already introduced him before. Please welcome Qaaman. Hello.
Alrighty, guys. It is Qaaman here today, and I'm excited to do this what-if discussion with Geekdom himself.
This is the second what if discussion. The first one you can find over on Qaaman's channel, which was about what would have happened if Goku had never hit his head. This is now the second one, and this one also has a lot to do with, well, baby Goku. So here's the question about Bardock, all right, Quinn? So Bardock escapes the planet blows up anyways. We know the survivors of planet Vegeta were, of course, Vegeta, Prince Vegeta. We have Nappa, we have Raditz, Bardock's other son, and of course Kakarot. Then you of course have the guys, I'm not going to count Broly and Paragus. You could if you want to, it's entirely up to you. We're not going to count them in this instance. Same thing with Tarble. We just know of the four in the original Dragon Ball manga. We're going to the original manga. Do you think that Bardock would he, because he knows that his son is going to, you know, grow up and fight Frieza. He saw the vision, he knows. Do you think that the first thing Bardock would have done is gone to Earth to find baby Kakarot and train him up himself? Is that a logical way of looking at things?
Well, for me, I felt that if he were to go to Earth, that would mean that if Bardock is on Earth, I mean, Earth is pretty much screwed, and he would pretty much wipe out the entire planet. So for me, it wouldn't really make any sense for him to go to Earth, because it's like, all right, I'm going to go to Earth, wipe out humanity, and me and my son are going to live on a deserted planet. Or I can just go to Earth, wipe out humanity, and just take my son and, you know, obviously traverse the universe and get in contact with the other Saiyans, which is what I think would be most likely to happen, considering that Bardock would have been completely aware of Frieza's pure intentions to destroy planet Vegeta.
And that's right. That's a good point I want to bring up, is that from what we see in the original manga, you know, Vegeta had suspicions. There's a filler scene in the anime that talks about this more thoroughly. Raditz had no idea. So you think that it's possible that Bardock would have gone, maybe initially, like once he left Planet Vegeta, would have gone out recruiting Prince Vegeta, Nappa, and of course his other son Raditz? Do you think they would have listened to him, or would it have been a situation where they would have just mocked and laughed at him, you know, based on what the other Saiyans did? I think that they probably would have listened, because the planet was really destroyed. Like, they would have gone back to, what, space dust? You know what I mean? If they had gone back to Planet Vegeta.
Right, and I think that most likely they might not be like completely believing in him at first, and obviously Bardock was kind of pushing himself up the ranks in terms of power, and obviously Vegeta's a very egotistical guy, and he wasn't even really that like emotional when the planet blew up anyway, so Vegeta probably wouldn't have cared as much. But I do think when you look at how intense Bardock was in knowing Frieza's intentions, I definitely think that down the line, especially Raditz, because that's obviously his dad, they would have believed him down the line, but it would have taken some convincing.
Yeah, and one thing I want to point out, because I know people are going to be asking about this, Bardock didn't actually see the vision of Goku fighting Frieza until moments before he died, which is why he smiled. So, even though we don't see it, theoretically speaking, if Bardock would have continued to have those visions of the future, it could be a case where he not only saw that, but he saw beyond that. Because this guy was cursed for the rest of his life. So maybe Bardock would have even seen, what would have happened with Goku, maybe even on Earth, fighting Cell. However, I think that had Bardock survived, the future would be drastically different. And thus, he may not have seen the same thing. We have to think about this fourth dimensionally here. Right. So, Bardock escapes. Obviously, we're going to talk about episode of Bardock just briefly. Bardock gets sent to the past in that story, and he does transform into a Super Saiyan. Now, a lot of Dragon Ball fans, Quinn, have a problem with this because they felt that Bardock was not strong enough to become a Super Saiyan at that time. He may have gotten a Zenkai boost from being blown to the past. Not much to say there, but I know a lot of fans don't like that episode of Bardock because of that very reason. But that being said, we also have cases like Goten, who is, of course, a huge prodigy. He was able to achieve Super Saiyan as a kid with going through little to no adversity. So, Bardock, could he have found like an empty planet and maybe trained himself up to at least hit Super Saiyan or maybe a little bit below that and rematch Frieza? Do you think he would have done that?
Well, what I think most likely would have happened would have been a similar case as what's been implied with Vegeta in the series Geekdom, where it would just be something that just takes place over time. So to kind of elaborate on my point a little bit, there's a lot of stuff to say. If you look at Vegeta's power when he fought Goku, Vegeta had a power level of an 18,000, right? And Vegeta pretty much fought his whole life to get to that level. The reason why Vegeta went to new heights was because he got Zenkai boost and went through all those fights on Namek. But if Vegeta just continued living his life, he wouldn't have been as strong. So I think the only way for Bardock to logically be stronger is that he would go around the universe pillaging planets to his own rebellious degree and getting stronger with Goku and the other Saiyans in doing that, as opposed to training in a more organized fashion.
So you think that maybe he would have gotten together with Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz and created some kind of like, I don't know, like
a rebel
maybe
team.
Yeah, like a squadron, like a secret kind of squadron, like a Suicide Squad, I guess, to have rebelled against Frieza. See, that would have been a great what if. If you're out there and you're a manga artist, and if you're out there and you want to be a manga artist, draw that what if for us, dude. That would be so much fun to read. But because that would go along with this video. I kind of wish we already had it. But yeah, that's a great idea. The thing that we have to let everybody know, that you and we have to let them know, is that there's no way Bardock could have gone and rebelled or gone and attacked Frieza or gone back to the Empire after that special, because Dodoria and him fought. Dodoria thought he was dead. If Bardock would have shown up prematurely, Dodoria would have just told Frieza, this dude's trouble, and Frieza would have taken him out. The idea of Bardock licking his wounds, being an intelligent fighter and not so, I guess reckless, would have been that he would have left, he would have trained up, and then eventually, maybe he would have left Kakarot alone to live his life, and maybe during Goku's fight with Frieza on Namek, maybe that would have been the right time for him to strike, and maybe he would have gone in there and helped Goku fight Frieza. Again, there's too many variables here to really say that, but I think there's a possibility that he would have done that. But I like your idea of him recruiting Vegeta, Nappa, and Raditz and kind of secretly still working for Frieza. Not him. He would have to have been in the shadows, but the idea of him being this secret, like you said, rebellion leader in the shadows, waiting for the right time to strike, training with Vegeta, Raditz, and Nappa, getting them stronger. I don't know if they would have unlocked Super Saiyan, but still, just the idea of them training and biding their time with Bardock's knowledge of what Goku was going to do would have had drastic changes in the series. I mean, we're talking about a totally different series from the Frieza saga forward.
Right, and Geekdom, I wanted to add two quick things here. One thing that I find really interesting about all of this stuff is that despite the fact that we are kind of coming to a conclusion that Bardock might have created a rebellious group, I believe personally that even if he created a rebellious group, it wouldn't have succeeded because A, they would have needed Zenkai boosts to get even remotely strong enough to even compete with Frieza.
They would have needed several, yeah.
On top of that, you remember, Frieza's people have a way of tracking where Saiyan pods are, and they also have a way of tracking their scouters. That's how Frieza learned about, you know, the whole Dragon Balls on Namek and all of that stuff. So, with
They would have had to have been really careful.
Right, they should have like destroyed the pods or like probably find some other maneuver of like traveling throughout space, because if they just use their space pods, I mean, Frieza could have access to them. But my question to you though, Geekdom, is just for a fun brief conversation, what do you think about the alternate Bardock story that we see in the Dragon Ball Minus with him and Gine? If, let's say, he left that planet with Gine, how do you briefly think that would have changed Dragon Ball?
I mean, I almost feel like if it would have been with Gine, that they would have probably gone to Earth, picked up Kakarot, and probably raised him away from everything else, and then possibly still have reunited with the others. Because remember, in Dragon Ball Minus, Raditz and Vegeta are together in that version of the story. So if Bardock's going to go after his other son, he's going to have to run into Vegeta. And I feel like had that happened, it would have still ended up being the same thing, where they would have asked, you know, where have you been, yada yada, and then maybe Bardock would have told him, listen, you know, this is what's going to happen, and it's bad. But the thing is, you have to also remember that in that version of the story, Bardock did not have the vision of the future. That was only in the TV special, not in Minus. So it's hard to say. That one is a lot harder, and a lot of people, Quinn, are not fans of Dragon Ball Minus. That's like one of the most despised stories in Dragon Ball. It's kind of weird, but it is.
Right, and we both pretty much come to the consensus that even without the visions, obviously, and Bardock still wanted to just rebel on his own will, it still would have failed even probably more, because he would have been even weaker than what he originally was, because he wouldn't have gotten a Zenkai boost.
They would have had to have taken him, Raditz, Nappa, Kakarot, and Bardock, and they would have had to have fought each other and trained each other for years and years and years and years and years, exploited Zenkai. I mean, they would have had to fight each other forever and then get strong enough. Because I think that if they all trained for years, I'm talking about years here, and it was like 5-on-1 against Frieza, they might have been able to take him out. They didn't even have to be Super Saiyan necessarily. It's possible. It's hard to say. I'm not going to overthink it. But if it's 5-on-1 and they're a lot stronger, it could have been bad news for Frieza. But again, I know a lot of fans would love to see that scenario, but what can you do? Anyways, folks, check out Qaaman's Land. You should already be subscribed if you are not. And let us know in the comments not only what you think Bardock would have done. I'm very curious to get your thoughts. But also, if you have any suggestions for future what-if discussion topics, please leave them in the comments, as we will be looking at them and picking apart some ideas here and there to do future videos on. Thank you so very much. What do you think would have happened with Bardock had he not rebelled against Frieza? Would he have rebelled later? Would he have gone live his life separately? Let us know. We'll talk to you down the road.
And guys, if you want an alternate way that they could have possibly have defeated Frieza, you can safely say that they could have all held hands, be positive, become a Super Saiyan God, and fight Frieza that way.